My name's Irene Zande. I'm the executive director and founder of Kidpower, Teenpower, Fullpower International, which is a mouthful. We started by teaching kids, and then people said, what about our teens? And they don't want to call it Kid Power, so we said, okay, Teen Power. And then adults started saying, what about us? And we realized where that was going with with adult power, senior power, work power, you name it, power. So we decided full power for our name for all of our adult programs, which means using your full power to stay safe. And that's for adults, and also sometimes teens come under that umbrella. And by safe, we don't just mean physically safe, we also mean emotionally safe. And part of emotional safety, and often physical safety, is knowing how to set, recognize, and respect and uphold appropriate boundaries. So today, and we've been doing, this is our second webinar today, is about our full power boundaries and how we teach people about boundaries. We teach, by the way, we've shortened our name most of the time. When I say Kid Power, we say that's for kids and people who used to be kids, and that means all of us. So we will include examples with children because many of you are either working with or supporting children. And we will also include many examples of boundaries with adults. The reason I do this work is because in 1985, when my kids were young, I ended up protecting a group of young children from a man who was threatening to kidnap them. And even though I stopped him by yelling, having that experience motivated me to gather with many people of all kinds of backgrounds to start Kidpower in 1985. One of those people is Ellen Bass, who is our founding board president. And you're going to hear more about her in a few minutes. But she co-authored a book called The Courage to Heal, which has been a best-selling book from people for survivors of childhood sexual abuse. The skills we teach are for preventing and solving problems with people. Problems like bullying or just not getting along and stress, or like abuse, or even like more serious problems like assault. However, these same skills help us to have safer and stronger relationships every single day. I realize, you're not supposed to use this as a mirror, but when something's totally crooked, then just got to adjust. As I said, creation is a bit messy, and we are figuring this all out, and you're with me, and thank you for that. So the founding principle of Kidpower is, and boundaries help us to uphold our founding principle. The principle is that the safety and well-being of a child are more important than anyone's embarrassment, inconvenience, or offense. Theirs, ours, or another person's. As the years have gone by and we started to serve everybody, we realized that each of our safety and well-being are more important than anyone's embarrassment, inconvenience, or offense. And this came from at the very beginning. That's why it's our founding principle, as Ellen Bass and I were signing the letters of incorporation for Kidpower. She said, what we're doing here is revolutionary. We're saying that the safety and well-being of a child are more important than embarrassment, inconvenience, or offense. And I said, could you repeat that, please? And I wrote it down on the back of an envelope. Now, if you're feeling like you have to grab a piece of paper and write something down on the back of an envelope or something else, or type it, that's fine if you want to, but we are going to be sending you materials, and Erica's going to be including links to materials that are on our website that have so that our boundaries handouts have this principle in it. So you don't have to write it down unless you really want to. It's easy to say that on the one hand, safety and well-being are more important than upset feelings or uncomfortable feelings. However, when we ask people, how many of you don't like to be embarrassed or hate to embarrass most other people, most people raise their hands. You can raise your hands if you want to. How many of you don't like to be embarrassed or to embarrass most other people? And how many of you don't like to be bothered when you're busy or to bother most other people? I say most because there's sometimes somebody in our lives that we don't mind bothering or embarrassing, often a sibling. How many of you do not like that feeling when people are angry at you or you're angry at them? You can raise your hands. There's lots of people raising your hands, I can see. And how many of you feel like kids in your life feel the same way? So learning how to deal with these, to recognize that upholding our right and the rights of other people to be treated with safety and respect, and the responsibility of each of us to act safely and respectfully towards ourselves and others, is challenging. What we need to set boundaries with, boundaries are limits first. Boundaries are limits. It's like a fence or a wall. Those are physical boundaries. We can think of lots of physical boundaries. Personal boundaries, often we are not visible, and we recognize them when they're crossed. For example, suppose that you were joking with friends and suddenly somebody said something that hurt your feelings or that was disrespectful to people that were important to you or to somebody else. And that feeling of, hey, that's not funny. That hurt my feelings, or that feels disrespectful. That feeling is a signal that your personal boundaries were being crossed. If suppose that somebody, you were roughhousing with somebody, or some people were roughhousing with each other, and suddenly one of them says, oh, hey, that's too rough. It feels scary or it hurts. That feeling is, again, a signal. My boundaries or that person's boundaries are being crossed. So what we have to do, and it's not always, sometimes we have to set boundaries with ourselves. Right now, I'm constantly having to set boundaries with myself to say, okay, I can't just get in the car and drive to the store in any hour. Or okay, I need to stay inside right now. That is an example of setting boundaries with ourselves because of the situation we're in. We're in a lockdown. Stay at home. It's not lockdown, but it's orders to shelter in place here in California. Setting boundaries with each other. People usually think of each other rather than with ourselves. But setting boundaries with ourselves can also help us to act more kindly and mindfully and respectfully with others. But setting boundaries with each other between two people also is a place where understanding the principles and tools of boundary setting can be extremely helpful. And when it doesn't work, and that's what we'll be getting next week, next Tuesday, we'll have a wonderful session on conflict resolution. About how to work it out when boundary setting, just basic boundary setting that we're doing today, does not work. And we also have to set boundaries with what we like to call faceless systems, such as the telephone company. If you've ever tried to fix something with the telephone company or an airline, and sometimes this person is so kind and understanding and apologetic, but they're not solving your problem, and you try to go up the chain of command, and it's sometimes you just get stuck in a loop. That's a faceless system. The healthcare system sometimes can feel like a faceless system, or insurance, where there's nobody taking responsibility, or they say they can't do it. On Thursday, we'll talk about advocacy and practice of advocacy skills, about what happens when somebody says it can't be done, but you know it needs to be done. And then, but often just basic, clear knowing, recognizing when your boundaries are crossed and knowing how to uphold them is going to make a tremendous difference for each of us. So we have 4 boundary principles. We each belong to ourselves is the first one. Some things are not a choice. Problems should not have to be secrets. And keep telling until you get help, until somebody does something to help. Let's say now we have safety signals, things we do with our body to help us remember to do it with our minds and to help keep our boundary principles in mind. So if you will, please just point to your chest and say, we each belong to ourselves. By the way, we have simple graphics that show this and great posters that Erica can send you a link to from our website, and we'll also include in our follow-up message. And just say we each belong to ourselves. The second boundary principle, and we do this like, oh, well, some things are not a choice. Right now, staying indoors a lot of the time is not a choice, because it's for our health and safety and the health and safety of our communities and the people around us. So we do this as an oh well, because it's frustrating to realize that even for adults as well as kids, some things are not a choice. Often for kids, sometimes kids will say, well, homework has nothing to do with health and safety. And I say, well, there's other things that aren't a choice too. Problems should not be secrets. Now, you hold your finger in front of your mouth, don't touch your mouth, and move it away and say, problems should not be secrets. Presents someone gives you should not be secrets. Games or activities or friendships should not be secrets. Any kind of touch should not be secrets. And for kids especially, we say anything to do with people in their private areas should not have to be secrets. And then the fourth principle is that you keep telling until you get help. So imagine these are two little heads, can be two adults, and it could be a kid to an adult. And I sometimes will have them say, I'll say, I need help. And the other one says, I will help you. There is something so powerful about being primed in our heads to say, somebody says, I need help. And you can say, I will help you. Now, helping somebody does not mean giving all your boundaries away or doing things that are dangerous to you or not in your best interest. But helping somebody can be sometimes just listening. It can be helping to point them to another resource. And we will be, as part of advocacy, we will also be working on different ways to get effective help. And that will be again on Thursday. So you keep telling until you get help. There are lots of things that can get in the way of setting boundaries. And I want to talk about three right now. And one is emotional triggers. Another one is the not feeling that you have the right to set a boundary, the internalized beliefs that get in the way of healthy boundaries, and then the longing to belong. So emotional triggers. Yesterday I did a whole webinar on managing our emotional triggers and emotional safety. And if you missed it, or even if you didn't, on Sunday, we're going to send out a newsletter where we will have links to the recordings of the webinars for everybody that's joined us and registered. So, but emotional triggers are thoughts, words, or gestures that cause us to explode with feelings. And when we're exploding with feelings, maybe it's the stress of being together when we were expecting to be able to go out and do things and not be together all day long. Maybe it's the stress of being far apart from somebody and having to communicate over distance because you're sheltering in place in different places. Maybe sometimes it's just the stress of disagreements or daily life. But when we're exploding with feelings, often, and I don't know about you, but I have too many times when I have not followed good boundary setting practices because I get too upset, and that makes it hard. Internalized beliefs. If you were raised in a home where boundaries were not respected or understood, and that's true for lots of us, for lots of reasons, even if we had parents who were doing the best they knew how at that time, the concepts of what boundaries are pretty new. Some people intuitively did it anyway and brought people up with mutual respect and understanding. But a lot of times parenting was pretty much of not just we do need parents to be in charge, but the way of being in charge, to realize that you can be powerful and respectful at the same time as a parent or as a leader, and that it isn't a thing of either you're respectful or you're powerful. We want to be both, so that often we were brought up in homes where we were just where our boundaries weren't respected, and things sometimes were arbitrary or hurtful. And of course, if somebody is brought up in an abusive home, then their boundaries were heavily violated over and over again, and that can lead to the belief that you don't have the right to have boundaries. You don't even know what they are, and that it's unsafe to protect your boundaries. Also, it can, well, I think that's enough on that. I think I'm going to go on to longing to belong, because this is a place where boundaries get swept aside very, very, very quickly. You admire somebody so much, you want to be liked by somebody so much that you that you let go of your boundaries. You don't want to be left out. You want to be included in a club or a group, and so you accept things that are unsafe for you. Sometimes a charismatic leader can cause people. I tell people in Kidpower, don't do anything just because I said so. Do things because they seem right to you. If you don't understand it in the moment, and we're in the middle of teaching a class, that's okay. We can discuss it later. But don't do something just because anybody said so. Just following a leader blindly. There's a story about, this is true, processionary caterpillars are caterpillars that follow each other. And somebody did an experiment where he put it wasn't very kind to the caterpillars, but put the caterpillars in a circle. So they were following each other around and around and around the rim of a bowl until they fell off from exhaustion. I think that sometimes we do that. We think we're following somebody and we want to belong, we want to be part of the group, but we aren't paying attention to whether this is the right thing to do, in keeping with our values, and in keeping with our best interests. So those are some of the things that get in the way of our boundaries. We have tools for effective communication of boundaries with people we know. You want to figure out what you want, what's right for you, and you also have to negotiate boundaries with the other person. And you can practice out loud how to do that. But I want to give you an example of something from my own life where I would travel a lot. I'm sure I'm going to be traveling again, but right now I'm not. But I would travel a lot. And when I was gone for Kidpower, I really wanted my husband, Ed, to say that he would miss me. And he'd say, I'd say, do you miss me? And he'd say, no, actually it's easier here when you're gone, which is true. And I said, and finally I said, look, Ed, would you rather have me home or away? And he said, well, of course I'd rather have you home. And I said, could you please name that feeling, missing me? And he said, okay. And so we worked it out. And then he asked me, Irene, when you come home, I'd miss you more if when you come home, you wouldn't just leave everything in a pile as you entered the house, as I take shoes off, coat off, drop my suitcase. So that was an area where I needed to start to understand and respect his need, his boundaries, and his need for order. There are ways of setting boundaries that work better, some that work better than other ways. One of the, a lot of times people have learned about I messages, when somebody says, you really make me mad because you left your stuff all over the place. That's not going to go so well, because when somebody's mad, you're just thinking, oh, they're mad and they're blaming me. And instead of taking ownership for your own feelings. And I realized that we were actually intuitively, we realized that we were intuitively making a bridge for a boundary before setting the boundary. Some people talk about a compliment sandwich, but usually when somebody gives me a compliment and I know there's something underneath it, that doesn't work so well for me. A bridge does, an acknowledgement of the other person's situation, reality. It could be, I understand you're in a lot of stress. That would be a bridge. Or I know you are only wanting to make a joke and have fun. Or I get it that sometimes we can get frustrated with each other. Or I know you want to just relax at the end of a day. That's the bridge, an acknowledgement, or, of the other person's reality. The next is then that you do make your I statement, which is, and own your own feelings. It's not you make me mad, it's I feel upset. And then you want to have specific behavior. I feel upset. I know that you really enjoy connecting with your friends, and I feel upset when you text while we're at the dinner table. Would you please talk with me? You're not labeling it disrespectful. You're not putting character judgments. You're just talking about the behavior and your own feelings in a way that's relatively neutral. If you say, I feel disrespected, there's still that element of blame. And you want to do this, it works best to do this without blame. We've had lots of different examples. You can, and we practice with people in boundary workshops, and we're going to get a chance to see a practice with Ellen in Berkeley, and Jan, who's from Germany, and in Berkeley with Ellen right now, in just a little bit. I want to go through the whole story, and then we'll get to see that they practice. So sometimes it doesn't work about your feelings. Once I was in a group home, and the staff said, the kids here care less about if I feel unhappy or I feel sad. And I said, okay, then we need another option, which is, or sometimes in a work relationship, bringing up your feelings is just not part of that culture. So it could be, to say with somebody, I was working with a healthcare program, and one of the physicians would get really, really grumpy at the assistants. And so it would be to say, I understand that we have a lot to do and it gets complicated. And it seems to me that it will work better if we can slow down and work on it together. It doesn't work for me when you're yelling at me. Would you please make some time so we can work it out? That would be a more work-related. In the group home, it was, I know you like sitting on each other's lap, and it's against our rules here to sit on laps when you're supposed to be doing your schoolwork. Would you please follow the rules and sit separately? So there's ways of modifying the model, but to keep it simple and not do a whole lot of explaining really helps a lot. However, I've had people say, I did a perfect job. I did it in a nice voice. I wrote it down. I practiced it, but it didn't work because the person just reacted really badly anyway. So, and I don't know about you, but if you want to raise your hands, how many people here hate being told what to do? I think it's probably quite a lot of you. How many people here don't like to be told that you did something wrong or that made somebody upset? I don't like it either. So we need to be prepared for negative reactions to our boundaries. Our boundaries handout has has a lot of these negative reactions. And sometimes people will even circle the negative reaction and practice with somebody else. So it could be to say, if I don't do that, or I don't know what you're talking about, or that never happens. That's denial. It could be minimizing, saying, can't you take a joke? You're so oversensitive, or, what's wrong? Is it that time of the month or something? irritating. But that's a normal reaction, is to try to minimize. And sometimes it's counteracting, it's counterattacking. The person feels attacked, even no matter how good a job you did. Sometimes people feel attacked when we set boundaries. And it would be, how dare you say that to me? You have no right to say that to me. You're just jealous. I will not be okay unless you just go along with things the way I want them to be. That would be countering attacking. It might be denying your right to have a boundary, to say, just shut up. I'll do whatever I want. I'm in charge here. You've got to do what I say. I can't deal with this. I can't talk about it anymore. That would be the counterattack. And then this is one that I have a hard time dealing with. It's when somebody gets so devastated setting a boundary. I apologize abjectly. You must think I'm a horrible person. I know I just completely screwed up, and I know you must hate me. And then you find yourself, oh my gosh, taking care of their feelings instead of setting your boundaries. So you don't want to do that, but it's easy to get sucked in. At least it's easy for me to get sucked in. So we want to have positive responses, and to practice them. There are many positive responses to negative reactions, and to have these in our pocket. You can even write it out. What is it you think the other person's going to say when you set a boundary? I can remember I was practicing with one woman who wanted to tell her mother that to stop making jokes about gay people because she was gay. And I said, so what do you think your mom's going to do? She said, I think she's going to drop dead of a heart attack. And I said, well, if that happens, then you can call 911, or you can call for emergency help. And short of that, then, so there you've got your plan. And what do you think she's going to say? She said, I think she's going to say she'll never want to speak to me again. And I said, then you're going to respond with love. You're going to say, I understand this is hard for you, and I love you, and I hope that you can accept me the way I am. And be okay with her disconnecting and needing some time to think about it. Turned out she did it, and her mom already knew, and it actually made things a lot less stressful in their family. So writing it out, rehearsing with somebody, practicing with those negative reactions that you're afraid of, writing them down. So you acknowledge feelings. You sound upset. I appreciate your concern. You sound caring. You're important to me, even though I don't like what you're doing. And then you restate your boundary. Now that you've told me your feelings, I don't want to have to bring this up again. Finding a common ground. Let's agree to disagree about this part of the problem, and see if we can't find a win-win solution about this other part of the problem. In some situations, you might need to say, stop, or I need to leave. Stop, or you have to leave. Stop, or our relationship will change. We need to change this. But that's after a lot of other things have failed. A lot more often is to take a break and try again later. I can't tell you how many hours and hours have been wasted with my husband and I, with Ed and I. We've been married 46 years, and we finally learned how to not do this most of the time. But how many hours were wasted when we have an argument at night, and often forgetting what the argument was even about. And having, and then the next day, but it was our communication became what the argument was about, not the initial cause. And the next day, having us work it out quickly and simply because we just weren't tired. So taking a break and saying, let's get some rest and talk when we're less tired. Let's give ourselves some time out to calm down. And don't say you need a timeout, say, let's have a timeout. If a situation becomes really unsafe, you can leave quietly and get help. Sometimes help is just calling a friend or somebody on the phone. Sometimes getting help means getting more serious help, depending on how or more formal help, depending on how big the problem is. You can request clarification. I don't understand. Can you tell me why you feel the need to make this kind of joke? Can you explain to me your purpose in constantly commenting about what I'm eating for dinner and my weight, for example? So you can request clarification that kind of, and then restate your boundary. Or you can write it down, because sometimes writing things down helps separate them and helps you look at it together. Let's look at this together instead of confronting each other. As a last resort, you should know how to escape from somebody if somebody's really becoming dangerous, and how to get help. So now I want to practice and demonstrate some of the ways that we teach these skills. So Ellen and Jan, if you will please join us, then we'll practice.
Hi.
Hello, there you are. So first of all, I want to introduce, because I want to practice in a more simple form and clear form, good, thank you, of boundary setting, which is about boundaries on touch. So I want to introduce our boundaries and consent safety checklist. The first, there are 4. This is touch, or games, or attention for play, or fun, or affection, which means you like somebody, should be the choice of each person, safe, allowed by the people in charge, and something that others can know, that does not have to be a secret from everyone. So, but something that people who you trust, or if you're kids, something your adults can know. So we have a way of, again, with our safety signals. So what I'd like all of you to do is, as I'm doing things with Ellen and Jan, and you're going to do what they do. You're going to repeat after me and make the safety signals. And that's Nikki, yes, who's helping us out here. So touch, or games, or attention for play, or fun, or affection needs to be safe. Just hug yourself and say safe.
Safe.
Good. It needs to be the choice of each person. Put your thumbs up like this and say choice of each person.
Choice of each person.
And sometimes with kids, I like to make it silly and say, is this your choice? Yes, it's my choice. It's the choice of each person. Say it again, choice of each person.
Choice of each person.
Now, suppose it's this person's choice, but not this person's choice. If one person says, hey, let's play tag, and the other person doesn't want to, you don't play tag, because it's not the choice. And then it has to be allowed. This is a nodding head. It means agreement at least in American Sign Language. And it means it allowed, and we say allowed by the people in charge, or in the case of kids, allowed by your grown-ups in charge. So say allowed by the people in charge. Go ahead.
Allowed by the people in charge.
Excellent. And then, so I hope that you're practicing, because doing the signals, using these gestures with your body helps you remember to do it with your minds later, helps you remember to use this checklist as you're assessing whether something is safe and respectful and follows your consent boundaries and safety rules or not. And finally, it should not have to be a secret, which means others can know. So put your hands up like this and say, others can know.
Others can know.
Okay. I want to come back to things that should not have to be a secret. So can you put this is back to the boundary rule, because I didn't quite get to all of this. So put your finger in front of your mouth, shake your head and say, no, actually I did do everything that shouldn't be a secret, didn't I?
You did.
Okay, then I don't need to do it. Should not have to be a secret. Just say any kind of touch should not have to be a secret.
Any kind of touch should not have to be a secret.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so we're going to practice some levels of intrusion with the boundaries on touch. And I'd like you to demonstrate this by having Jan sit in a chair. And we'll imagine that Jan is somebody lower in power, even if taller in height than Ellen, and that maybe that you're his boss at work, and you're somebody that's pretty affectionate and likes to put a hand on his shoulder as he's working. Now, if Jan likes it, if you like it, is that okay, Jan? If you like it,
Okay.
yeah. Is it okay to change your mind?
It is totally okay to change your mind.
Let's imagine that you change your mind, but Ellen doesn't notice. And you're going to do what a lot of people do. You're not going to say or do anything. You're just going to wish that she take her hand off of your shoulder. So I want you to wish. Wish harder. I'd like everybody watching this to wish with Jan that Ellen would take her hand off of his shoulder. Is wishing working, Jan?
It is not working.
All right. So I'm wondering, we'll just pause for a second here. Keep your hand on his shoulder though, Ellen. If you would raise your hands, if you have ever wished that somebody would not do something or would do something, but you didn't tell them. Yes, and it's normal to get very frustrated when that happens. Excuse me. It's normal to get very frustrated when that happens. And sometimes that's when people get so frustrated, you might just shrug her hand off your shoulder and say, cut it out. Go ahead. Shrug your hand off. Shrug. No, do it with a shrug of your shoulder. Just throw her hand off the shoulder with your shoulder like this.
Cut it out, Ellen.
And that's not going to go well because she didn't notice that you didn't like it and you didn't tell her. So now let's practice how it's going to work the best. Somebody doesn't notice, you just tell them with your eyes, your words, and your body. Remove her hand, give it back to her, and say, please stop. Go ahead.
Ellen, please stop.
And have you, most of the time that will work. But have you ever noticed that sometimes other people don't listen to you? We used to ask kids how to show us how, in what way might your adult not listen to you? And this tells you how long ago Kidpower started, before we had the internet, laptops, and the texts and mobile phones. So this kid says, he pulls up as if he was holding a newspaper, and he says, stock market's up 2 points. What is it you wanted, son? And this kid showed me that. Of course, now we wish the stock market was up more than 2 points, but that's another story. So there's lots of ways of not listening, but we're going to keep this simple. Just put your hand back. Okay, first of all, let's just start from the beginning. So you're just going to show that you take off the hand, and then she's going to put it back and not listen. Go ahead, Jan. Just say, please, the same thing. Please take your hand off my shoulder, and just take it off and look at her.
Stop, Ellen.
Okay.
But I like it. I like having my hand here.
And so that's not listening. And so you're going to need to tell her more strongly. When somebody doesn't listen, remove her hand and stand up, make a fence with your hands, and say, can we get the camera angled up a little more?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay. So make a fence with your hands. A fence is like this. And say, please stop. I said stop.
I said stop.
Okay. Now the next level is to have hurt feelings, or in this case, you're his boss. So say, that's really disrespectful. I was just being friendly. What's your problem? That would be. Go ahead.
Jan, what is your problem? I was just being friendly. You're completely overreacting.
Say, I don't mean to upset you. I just don't want to have your hand on my shoulder right now.
Ellen, I don't want to upset you. I just don't want you to have your hand on my shoulder right now.
Say, because you can say, I'm trying to concentrate.
I'm trying to concentrate.
And Ellen, most of the time that would work, but we're trying to show all the levels of intrusion. We do have an article about that that you can read, but so just tell him to sit back down. It's okay. And then offer him a promotion or something. Okay, give him a bribe. Okay.
Well, you just sit back down. You need to relax. Here, have a
Sit down.
have a seat.
He's your boss. Sit down. You're back at your computer.
If you would just be a little more friendly, I could arrange for you to get a big promotion. What do you think?
Okay. This would be crossing the line, or with kids we say breaking the safety rules. This is an abuse of power. It's also a bribe that is trying to pressure somebody into doing something that's really not consent. So you can, you're going to stand up and say, stop or I'll report you. Go ahead.
Stop, Ellen, or I'll report you.
And Ellen, you're going to react badly to that. Okay.
Report me? You better not report me, or something really bad is going to happen to you.
So you'll lose your job. You'll be fired.
You're going to lose your job. I can get you fired.
And no one will ever hire you again.
Say that again?
Say no one will ever hire you again. I'll give you such a bad reference.
Ever hire you again. That'll be the end of your career.
Okay. So this is an unsafe situation. And so you're going to say, I won't tell if you stop. Go ahead.
I won't tell anyone if you stop right now.
All right. So you say, okay, fine. And then you walk away, Ellen.
Okay, fine.
Okay. So Jan, once this person is away from you, and and even though you made a promise,
Even though I said I won't report her out.
Yes, we tell kids that most of the time we want you to tell the truth and keep your promises. And if you're doing it to be safe, to get out of an unsafe situation, it's okay to lie, to tell an emergency lie, and to break a safety promise, because you're doing it to be safe. And you're going to tell somebody you trust as soon as you can. So that was very, very, very well done. And I have more I want to practice with you. So I'm going to move on. We'll go into getting help and being persistent in getting help, and how to get help both for adults and kids in different situations when we talk about advocacy for ourselves and others. However, I want to run through a practice and then have you do that boundary setting practice where you deal with a negative reaction. So I want everybody can do what Ellen and Jan are doing. So put a hand on his shoulder. This is how we practice with the group. Go ahead and put your hand on your own shoulder, but pretend it's my hand. If you like that hand there, that's just fine. But let's say you don't. So remove the hand. Look at me and say, please stop.
Please stop.
Great. And I don't listen. The hand comes back. So, and I say, oh, I'll stop, but I don't stop. Or I say, I like touching your shoulder. Or I say, you always like this. You know you do. So I'm not listening. So you're going to tell me more strongly. Remove my hand, make a fence, and say, I said stop.
I said stop.
The next level is what we call with kids making you wrong for setting a boundary, or emotional coercion for teens and adults, which means using your feelings against you. So I say, that hurt my feelings. I thought you were my friend. Say, I don't want to hurt your feelings.
I don't want to hurt your feelings.
I am your friend.
I am your friend.
And I want you to stop.
And I want you to stop.
Good. Suppose I say, you're being disrespectful. Say, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I just want you to stop.
I don't mean to be disrespectful. I just want you to stop.
And then the next level of intrusion is crossing the line. Between peers, if it were peers, you're the same in power, you might say, if they're in your space, you might say, stop or you have to leave. Go ahead and say that.
Stop or you have to leave.
If I just keep going, if I just don't listen, if I say, I'll do whatever I want, it'll be stop or you have to leave. If I'm crossing the line and you're in another space, maybe I'm trying to get you to steal something and you're in a store, say, we will be in stores again. So say, Say, stop or I'll leave. Go ahead.
Stop or I will leave.
Suppose that I cross the line or break the safety rules by doing what Ellen was doing, some kind of sexual harassment. So now I'm in more power. Say, or I might be a colleague who's just making your life miserable by making sexual remarks or by staring or by being emotionally abusive. Say, stop or I'll report you.
Stop or I'll report you.
I might cross the line by offering an unsafe bribe. Look, I'll take you on an expense-paid, guilt-free trip to Hawaii safely, with no viruses, for as long as you want, if you'll just do something a little bit wrong. Say, stop or I'll tell.
Stop or I'll tell.
I will tell you that that kids, people, I do this for adults to realize that when kids are given a bribe that is like candy, I'll take you to the ice cream store and buy you all the ice cream you want if you'll just let me touch you after you said no. Then, or you'll just let me hug you or hold you or maybe do something else to you after you said no. That allure of that expense-paid, guilt-free trip to Hawaii is as big as the as the candy. I mean, the candy is as big as that trip. So suppose I say, I'm the adult, you're the kid. You have to do what I say. Say, stop or I'll tell.
Stop or I'll tell.
Or I say, I won't, I will let you stay up as late as you want if you'll just let me help you put your pajamas on after you said you want to do it yourself. Say, stop or I'll tell.
Stop or I'll tell.
So it's a hand on his shoulder can represent many kinds of boundary violations. And then the last level of intrusion is when somebody makes you feel unsafe about telling. Now, we don't want to put scary, awful images in people's minds that don't need to be there. So we keep it kind of general. We say, I'll tell everybody you were causing problems if you say anything about this. Promise me you won't tell. Say, I won't tell if you stop.
I won't tell if you stop.
Or I might say, please don't tell. I could lose my job and we'd never get to be together anymore. And again, if you feel threatened, you might say, I won't tell if you stop. Go ahead.
I won't tell if you stop.
And when you get away from this difficult person I'm pretending to be, what are you going to do?
Tell.
Good. All right. So now I know that you have a situation where it's a personal boundary setting practice. So you need to tell who each of you are and then just show the problem. So people can write down what the situation is, who the other person is, and what kind of negative reaction do you want to practice persisting in setting your boundaries with. So go ahead.
So in this scenario, Jan and I are housemates, and he's been doing a bunch of things that are not thoughtful in the housemate relationship. So I'm going to address it with a Fullpower bridge.
Okay, good.
Okay?
With boundaries.
Jan, I know you love coffee, and I also love coffee. And when I come down and you've drunk all the coffee in the morning, I feel upset.
Honestly, sometimes you make coffee, sometimes I make coffee. It's just coffee. What's the big deal here?
Well, we both love coffee, and when you drink the last of the coffee, I'd like you to make more.
Fine.
And you say, thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
Because often people react badly. They don't say, oh, that's so great that you told me. If you've done a lot of work, I try to say, thank you for telling me. I'd rather know when I'm crossing somebody's boundaries, really rather know. But I've been doing this for 30 years. So most of the time people say, again, another little picky thing. And you still say thank you because they listen to you. So I want to thank the two of you. And I'm going to, Erica, if you will tell me what the two questions are, that would be great. So the two of you can turn off the video and you can say thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Okay. So Erica, what are the two?
Erica. And one question, Irene, somebody would really appreciate some examples, some tips for situations families might be dealing with, trapped inside because of the coronavirus right now. Grumpy parents, kids fighting, mom and dad arguing. Could you address that?
Yes. The some of the tools that we worked on yesterday about managing our own emotional safety and teaching emotional safety skills to each other is very helpful. When people are really upset, it is difficult to set boundaries and trying to lower the emotional temperature and make a plan. The other is that part of why we have already, I think, 80 people signed up next week for the conflict resolution webinar, because making a plan as a family and practicing outside of the heat of the moment some tools for managing, for identifying the areas of conflict and making a plan about them can make a tremendous difference. When there is a conflict, being able to go through a conflict resolution process is also very helpful. So you can set boundaries, and a lot of the time it works. And sometimes also we have to allow for the fact that it's normal to push against boundaries. Some kids, if you don't take it personally, that was one of the emotional safety skills we talked about yesterday, not to take it personally. When somebody pushes boundaries, maybe it's because they're forgetful. Maybe it's because they're triggered, or they have mental health issues. And sometimes people stuck together have to deal with that. Then protecting your own emotional safety and viewing them with compassion, and still protecting your boundaries, saying this is my space and you may not be here, or this is my time and this is what you're going to do. And then having that confidence, to projecting an attitude of confidence when you are setting boundaries, and working on your ability to be clear and assertive as you do it. So that's just a short answer to a very important and long question. So yes, we've had parents, something I loved that Erica said about kind of lowering your expectations and picking only the things you really need to set boundaries about. So things get a little messy, and maybe you make a time when you clean it up, or maybe you let somebody have their messy space and you have your neat space, and you stay out of each other's space. Sometimes lowering your expectations, the pressures. Erica did some discussion for us with people who are suddenly homeschooling, and we'll be sharing some of the lessons from that. But to say that when she ended up needing to homeschool, her two goals became that at age 18, my kids will know how to read and write, and they will be mentally healthy and have that, which means having good emotional intelligence skills. And she was more than successful. Her kids are in college. And without her needing to save for it, because that wasn't an option. And I think that the pressure we're putting on ourselves of we have to save for college, or we have to have the kids get good grades so they can get into the college, it isn't always so. And so that can remove a lot of the stress in a family. So picking your issues, figuring out what's really important, and finding a way to negotiate. And then there's always more to learn, and we're going to make more space to learn more skills for that. Erica, what was the other question?
Irene, there are two more questions now. They both relate to workplace. So I'm going to share with both, and then I'm going to encourage people to email us at safety@kidpower.org, since we only have a few minutes for both of these important questions. Both relate to workplace. One refers back to the example you gave. You were giving with Ellen in the practice a workplace example. And the person asked, what if that happens? And you said, I won't tell if you stop. And the person stops. Do we report after? To whom? Another participant said, described a situation in the workplace with a boss that involved really touch and attention that didn't feel okay. and a sense that really this is not appropriate, but you know what? It happened only once, quickly, and it was over. I didn't mention it. Should I have brought it up with that person after the fact? Those are the two questions, Irene.
Those are great questions. So, the first question of I'm sorry, I guess I should have answered them one at a time, Erica. I'll get to the second question and get back to the first one. The answer is it depends. If it's affected we have an article called Integrity and Communication, and it's about if somebody did something once and you really feel resolved about it, whether it was if it was really sexual harassment level touch, then it'd be a good idea to tell them so that they don't do it to somebody else at the very least. And how they react is going to tell you a lot about whether you need to go on and report it. And I remember the other question, or not. So it depends. Because without more details, it's hard to judge the exact situation. But what you want to do is to say, am I still not trusting that person? Am I talking about it with other people? If you feel unresolved, then I think you could say something, I'm so sorry, I didn't tell you this at the time. I felt very uncomfortable. And when something happened, that you did this, and I felt that it was inappropriate and wrong. And there's many other ways that I respect you, if there are, and I want to put this to rest. And if they say, I am so sorry, or even, I don't remember doing that, or even, but I didn't do that, I would never do that. You can say, this was my experience, and I just want to make sure that it never happens again to me or to somebody else here, because it's inappropriate in the workplace. In terms of whether you should tell or not tell in a work situation and who you tell, unfortunately, it depends on the workplace. There are places where there's very strong human resource departments where you can talk about something and say, I feel uncomfortable with this behavior. It was inappropriate. It was distracting me. It was creating an unwelcoming environment, which is in many countries against the law. However, how well that's upheld and whether it's worth it or not, again, depends on the situation. There are some jobs where there is no, without going, and you have to decide how far are you willing to go and how much does it keep happening. If you set your boundaries and it doesn't happen again, and there's no place to report, then you have to, there's not a right or wrong answer. You have to weigh the pros and cons. There are things when, as I look back, when there was sexual harassment situations, but it wasn't even against the rules at that time. And so I didn't have a place to report. And so I understand the complexity of this. And again, workplaces are different. The thing to remember, though, is if somebody does something to you, they very likely do it to somebody else, either intentionally or thoughtlessly. And that's why we practice. And we've got an article on sexual harassment also that I guess we better add to what we're going to send out in our follow-up message. Again, our follow-up messages will be coming to you. Thank you, Erica. Our follow-up messages will be coming to you on Sunday. It'll have the link to the recording and some articles. We've had a tremendous response to our webinars. I want to thank you so much for being here and being part of this. You really, this is new for our organization, as so many things are new and a struggle for so many people right now. We are, like so many, facing a huge loss of income as a nonprofit because we've stopped all our in-person classes, and we are keeping our people employed and putting them all to work to launch online classes without any because we had such a huge demand for that. But we also know for in-person classes that we know that people wanted online. So we're making this happen now without any funds at all. So if you're in a position to even donate a little, if you go to our donate page, if you just go to our homepage, kidpower.org, it's right on the top. Or Erica, maybe you could just put the donate link in the chat bar, and just in a donation at any amount, or if you'll tell other people about that, making a donation to Kidpower will make a difference. And finally, the most important thing you can do is stay safe and healthy yourselves. Please keep joining us. Please keep asking questions. And please take some time to teach some of the skills that we're teaching. Share them with people you know. Teach somebody you know some of these skills, because it can make a huge difference in the quality of their lives and in getting through this hard time. So I want to thank you all for being here. If we didn't get to your questions, we'll try later. We'll try to get back to you. And you can also email us at safety@kidpower.org, and we will answer your questions. So with that, I hope that those of you who are starting your day or in the middle of your day, go on and have a great day. And for those of us who are more in the evening nighttime zones, I hope that you have a good rest. Thank you for being with us in this exciting launch of Kidpower's online programs. And we will, just one more thought, we will be offering workshops that are smaller and with adults and with kids with their adults very soon. All right, have a great rest of your day or evening, and thank you again.